No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. This is Outspoken Live, episode number 48. Tuesday, September the 10th. Remember this day because it will go down as the moment Labour lost the next election. In 24 hours of shame for the deeply unpopular new Prime Minister, Tier Keir Starmer released thousands of violent criminals who are now unleashed on our streets celebrating. And they're becoming lifelong Labour voters in the process.
There's been a lot of happy people faces in there.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
Yeah. So you're grateful to Labour and you're grateful to the...
100% I am. I'm vote Labour all my life.
Yeah.
Labour's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah, listen, I've got to go. I've got lots of things to do. But it's nice seeing everyone, and this is unusual to me.
What is the plan now?
And why are so many violent criminals now on our streets early? In part to be able to lock up for years tweeting housewives and so-called rioters. Then, at the same time, Labour is breaking years of promises by stealing the winter fuel payment from pensioners, including World War II heroes, which will kill off at least 4,000 of them.
Last year, the Prime Minister was apparently drawing up plans to remove the winter fuel allowance from pensioners.
How much cheaper will our bills be?
Under a Labour government, we'd freeze those prices. We wouldn't allow them to go up ever. And that ought to bring down the household bills by about £400. An awful position to put a pensioner in, to reduce the energy bills by up.
What a disgusting liar. I'll unleash on slippery Starmer next in my digest. Also coming up today, new UKIP leader Nick Marcel Tenconi on why he is standing up for the victims of two-tier justice, including those involved in the Southport civil unrest. Plus, Angela Levin reveals the amazing secrets of Catherine, the Princess of Wales cancer-free video. Then, in the Uncancelled After Show, many more exclusives from Angela Levin. You can register to watch on our website right now at www.outspoken.live. It is a safe space, free of censorship, and your support at just £5 a month not only gives you 30 minutes of extra content every single weekday, it allows me to continue making this independent daily news show. And speaking of the news, breaking right now, word out of the Conservative leadership election, which has seen Mel Stride knocked out. If you didn't know, he's the one in the middle at the top. And I don't blame you for not knowing, by the way. No one knows Mel Stride. And if any Conservative MP, 16 of them did, think Mel Stride is the answer to the Conservative Party problems, then they have lost the plot. But let me bring you the results. Robert Jenrick leading with 33 MPs. Then Keir Badenoch with 28. It is a dead heat in the third position with 21 MPs backing James Cleverly and Tom Tugendhat. Mel Stride out with 16. But nothing at this point changes my belief that this will be a Robert Jenrick versus Keir Badenoch face-off, with Robert Jenrick becoming the next Conservative Party leader. Now, let's go. Today, the Labour government lost its soul and lost any shred of integrity it had left. In just 67 days, slippery Starmer has proven to be an empty vessel who is all talk and will punish those who won't vote for him, even World War II veterans, with a deranged and evil sense of glee. Tuesday, September the 10th. Remember this date? Because this date marks the beginning of the end of Sir Keir as PM. Do you reckon I'm exaggerating? Well, all I'd ask is how long do you think a party will tolerate a man with approval ratings that have dropped from plus 11 in July to negative 20 this week? So the first shame, the release of 1,750 mostly violent criminals on our streets in one day, after serving just 40% of their sentences, with many more soon to be unleashed on an unsuspecting public. The government lied when they said no violent or sex offenders would be released. Because in fact, a high proportion we know are domestic violence offenders. Just look at this headline in the Daily Mail. Starmer's shame as thug who blinded and paralysed a baby and a schoolboy's killer are freed under his early release scheme, leaving victims' families in tears. And there were literally champagne corks flying outside HMP Wandsworth today. Party time outside our prisons. This drug dealer, Dylan Benaloa, told the Daily Mail he is now a lifelong Labour voter. And the criminals who were released all seemed very grateful.
Are you sort of grateful to Labour for introducing this early release scheme?
Well, they're doing something instantly to show people they're trying to do something.
Yeah.
And every action has a reaction.
Yeah.
So you're going to feel them ripples further
Yeah.
down the line. But I think it's a good idea. He thinks it's a good idea.
Yeah.
But you ain't feeling that. So.
Yeah, grateful to Keir Starmer.
Anyway,
There's been a lot of happy people faces in there.
Yeah,
That's for sure.
yeah. So you're grateful to Labour and you're grateful to
100% I am.
Yeah.
I'm Labour, vote Labour all my life.
Yeah.
Labour's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah, listen, I've got to go. I've got lots of things to do. But it's nice seeing everyone,
Yeah,
and this is a
what-
new.
Now look, good luck to Ross there. I hope he gets back with his family and is able to turn his life around. But it does feel inevitable that one of those criminals released today, not Ross, will commit another heinous crime. And this was a choice about violent crime by Labour, who will release criminals in order to find space in prisons for housewives and pensioners who sent hurty word tweets or Facebook posts after the Southport massacre. As Christian Calgie posted on X, it is so blatantly obvious an early release prisoner is going to do something absolutely abhorrent. Do not buy claims this was the only option. Beyond building prisons, the government should have hired more Bibi Stockholms, anything to avoid doing this. Harriet Sargent agreed, writing, as he headbutted, punched and kicked his ex-partner, Shane Riley, told her he was, quote, enjoying it. Shane's one of 1,700 domestic abusers let out early by Starmer to free up space for rioters. Labour's making some strange and perilous choices here. Friend of the show, Calvin Robinson, who's here tomorrow, wrote, this is so risky. It is insane. The Labour government is releasing dangerous, unstable criminals who have not been rehabilitated. This is extreme neglect of both the prisoners and the general public. Any spilled blood will be on Tier Keir's hands. What a dangerous game to play. And furious former Home Secretary Suella Braverman went further, writing, risky is the understatement of the year. This will undoubtedly lead to reoffending and put more pressure on the police. Crime will be committed, public safety will be undermined, and victims will be let down. Today is a day of shame for this Labour government. Now, do you know we are releasing 5,000 prisoners early? 5,000 when 10,000 foreign nationals remained locked up in British jails, a point Richard Tice made today.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can the Secretary of State explain why, when there are some 10,000 foreign criminals blocking up space in our jails, why aren't they being removed and deported, simultaneously saving the British taxpayer billions of pounds every year and having the support of millions of British voters? Here.
They are being deported. They will continue to be deported. Nothing will change as far as deportation of foreign national offenders is concerned, but the inheritance that we had from the previous government meant we had to take further additional measures. The answer won't come from deportation of foreign national offenders alone, but it is very much part of the picture.
But it would if there was a simple solution. Deport them all now. If you come to the UK legally or illegally and commit a crime, you must be out. No excuses, no debate, no hesitation. But Labour's day of shame got worse this afternoon. Only one of its treacherous MPs, John Trickett, voted against removing the winter fuel payments to pensioners, a decision the party itself once conceded would kill 4,000 elderly.
Last year, the Prime Minister was apparently drawing up plans to remove the winter fuel allowance from pensioners.
How much cheaper will our bills be?
Under a Labour government, we'd freeze those prices. We wouldn't allow them to go up ever. And that ought to bring down the household bills by about £400. An awful position to put a pensioner in. To reduce the energy bills by up to £600.
No wonder the political outrage has been so significant, especially given Labour has handed £11 billion to unions as it takes £1.4 billion away from pensioners who mainly vote Conservative. Here's former Tory Cabinet Minister Esther McVey during today's debate.
What a Prime Minister, not even in office for 10 weeks, would be so out of touch with the public. Yet here we are, and yes, this Prime Minister is, along with the Chancellor and the whole of his Cabinet, who are going along with and supporting this cruel policy. The Chancellor should be under no illusion that the public knows this decision to rob millions of pensioners of their winter fuel allowance, for which the government has no mandate, has nothing to do with economics and everything to do with cynical political calculation. And the haste with which it is being done is breathtaking.
But let's look now at the human cost of these policies. Reform UK leader Nigel Farage has been talking about 99-year-old war veteran Jim O'Dwyer.
The job of an MP is to represent his or her constituents. One of mine in Clacton is Jim O'Dwyer. He's 99. He did 31 missions on Lancasters during World War II as Tail End Charlie, rear gunner, one of the most dangerous jobs in the war. And he's a fine gentleman. But because he has a very small private pension, guess what? His winter fuel allowance is being taken away. And as his daughter Jenny says, this is an absolute disgrace. Just look at the service this man has given our country, and this is how he is being treated. Believe me, I will today be voting against the removal of the winter fuel allowance. The job of an
Then there was this heartbreaking interview on Good Morning Britain.
13 is quite chilly.
I know. But what they don't understand is that so many pensioners are lonely, they're isolated. And on top of that, that's the biggest killer that there is. And yet on top of that, they're going to sit cold. They're going to be freezing. They're not going to be eating how they should. I don't cook meals. When I go to bed at night, I turn everything off. It doesn't matter what it is, click, 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 it's off.
And did you say you don't cook meals?
No, I've had since Christmas, I think I've cooked 5 meals in my oven.
Because you're too worried about turning the oven on and that
turn it off.
13 is...
And there's just as much of a cost with the early prisoner release madness. Listen to Rebecca, a victim of domestic violence.
I don't want to be in a position of releasing people who should be in prison.
But imagine being Becca, who received this letter last month saying her ex-partner, who'd mentally tortured her for years and strangled her until she passed out, was going to be released early under the scheme.
So I'm writing to inform you that the release date will be brought forward. The whole process doesn't feel right. Feels like he's just had a bit of a slap on the wrist and told not to be a naughty boy. But off you go. Whereas I have to deal with the damage that he's done to me.
It was only when we took up her case that she discovered he was being released just 6 days early. Her ex-partner had served his time for the domestic violence and was getting released early from an extra sentence for absconding from the court. But poor communication meant she thought he was being released 3 months early.
Releasing higher risk offenders to support someone who's rioted in the street is a bit extreme. I would much rather a domestic abuser stay in prison than a rioter be being sent.
Yes, Becca, you are right. But remember, it's not just so-called rioters being banged up for up to 9 years that has caused prisons to be overrun, but also poor souls who happen to post an inartful Facebook or X message in the hours after the Southport massacre. This is two-tier justice to a deranged level. So surely today is the moment when the hard left British MSM decide to hold this government to account. Because we know what they would be saying if this were a Tory administration making these decisions. Not so. Look at red-cheeked sociopath James O'Brien, now acting as a government stooge.
Tumbler of water, right? A small tumbler. Here's a shot glass. Here is a shot glass of water. And here is a pint pot. And they are both full. And you need to get some of the water in the shot glass into the pint pot, right? Everybody agrees that the people in the pint pot have already been punished. Whether they've been punished enough or not is moot. It doesn't matter because they've been punished more than the people in the shot glass. So if you've got a full pint pot and a full shot glass and you've got to get some of the water in the shot glass into the pint pot, what are you going to do with the pint pot? This isn't an opinion. This is counting. What are you going to do with the pint pot? Spoiler alert, you're going to have to pour some of the water out in order to empty the shot glass into it. And that is why almost every syllable of coverage of this story that I have seen is wrong-headed to the point of corruption, to the point of being entirely of a piece with all the lies and all the nonsense that they told us in support of the last lot, which they're now simply re-engineering in bogus condemnation of the new lot. So you tell me the alternative. How did we get to a place where we have more people in need of prison places than we have prison places?
Wrong-headed to the point of corruption? No, that's you, James O'Brien. Shameful. As Carl Benjamin of Lotus Eaters posted on X, incredible how James O'Gammon has turned into the biggest apologist for the Starmer regime. He's defending the worst kind of assaults on British society and is utterly incapable of moral consideration of the subject. Evil. Simply evil. Now, I would always speak up against the Conservative government when I knew they were wrong. I mean, goodness, there's a long list, but tax rises, COVID lockdowns, vaccine mandates, it goes on and on and on. So this shows how corrupted our mainstream media and elite class is, that they can sit back and watch this Starmer train wreck happen without even the slightest hint of criticism. Now it's time for our Uncancelled Interview. And I am delighted today to be joined by the new leader of the United Kingdom Independence Party, yes, UKIP, a role once held by Nigel Farage, but most recently taken over by Nick Marcel Tenconi. And Nick, we will speak much more about your role shortly. But first, your reaction to, I believe, the beginning of the end of Slippery Starmer's administration today.
Yeah, hi Dan. Thanks for having me on the show. So you've just showcased about 20 minutes of, I don't know, there aren't the words to describe that little 15, 20-minute segment there. So it's bad to worse every single day. There aren't the words. And with regards to James O'Brien and that last piece there and some of the questions that you've posed, you can't negotiate or deal with psychopaths. You just can't. We're talking about the far left. We're talking about people that can't be reasoned with. They can't be bargained with. They can't be negotiated with. And that's just the tip of the spear. So you mentioned the word outrage, which I'm quite happy about. We were at outrage point a long time ago in this country, and we can pinpoint specific landmarks with regards to where the British public, concerned citizens, mothers and fathers were at the peak of outrage. So you've got all of the anger, all of the anxiety, all of the depression, all of the helplessness. You've got all of it. Now it's about solutions. And in 5 years' time, we are voting our way out of this.
And do you think UKIP can be part of that solution?
So historically, everybody, it kind of goes something like this. If you're somebody like me, you're a Conservative Party member and voter through and through. The trust with the Conservative Party, bearing in mind the last 2 centuries, was just non-negotiable. There's a pride element there as well that you'll be very familiar with it. It's the Conservative Party, it's the blue blood thing. There's something about the Conservative Party which means I'm loyal to the end, a bit like a Labour voter. Some of those prisoners saying, I've always been the Fitzgerald chap, I've always been a Labour voter. Now I've gotten out early, I'm a Labour voter. Society that they vote one way, and that is absolutely it. The Conservative Party can rejig their leadership and rejig their high command structure all they want. The Conservative Party arguably was dead a very long time ago, and 2 years ago, within my inner circles in the Politico bubble, they were saying it's over, burn it to the ground. But I stood and I stayed, and I watched what happened with Truss. I watched what happened to Suella last October, and then I saw what Rishi did in March of this year when he had a chance on that Friday evening at the lectern to denounce radical Islam, to denounce Islamists, to denounce Hamas, to put it all together into one pot, which says, we are now going after you. You've had 6, 7, 8 months of this. You're clearly all terrorist sympathizers. And then, of course, you had the Henry Jackson report as well. So the opportunity to do the right thing, bearing in mind all the nails in the coffin, that's it. So there's no going back. But you're still going to have all these people voting Conservative. And Nigel knows that. And Reform know that. They're nowhere near radical enough, regardless of whether, I think they call them promises or pledges rather than a manifesto. Everyone knows
the contract,
everything that's socially conservative. Yeah, thank you. Everyone knows that which is socially conservative, with the heaviest Christian leaning, or whether you want to call it right-wing patriotic, comes out of the UKIP manifesto. But going back to my point, I didn't want to believe that because there were too many problems with UKIP's leadership, whichever year you want to refer to. So at some point, all those conservative voters or socially conservative families are going to have to accept the fact they're going to have to pick a side. Do they want radical, socially conservative, Christian-led right-wing change in the country, and they recognize the threat of far-left extremism, of communism, and of Islamism? Or do they want establishment 2.0, which is clearly what's happening as High Command at Reform and Reform as a party continually distance themselves from anything working class which goes close to upsetting the liberal apple cart, and anything which goes close to certain individuals who a lot of people see as champions of the local working class, hard-working man. When Reform get tested, they'll continually move towards establishment. That's been proven now.
Okay. So to clarify, you're saying almost that you're going to be proudly extreme or proudly far right? I don't know how you would define it, but is that what you mean?
Sure. No, it's a great question. So let me clear that up. So there's a difference between socially conservative and unashamedly right wing. So the point of that is that you're saying we're not centre ground, and this nonsense centre right term, stand for everything, stand for nothing. This liberalism and this liberal agenda is why the liberal elite have now got hold of our country, and we are in dire straits. So there is no more middle ground, middle room. We need to appeal to the centre. Absolutely not. We are dealing with evil. This is communism. This is far left extremism. You've just showcased that over the last 15 minutes. Absolutely heartbreaking. So anything which is seemingly establishment and is all about money and is all about big business, that has to be seen as a red flag. We are going to have to put culture first over the economy. And that potentially means taking steps back, not necessarily, but potentially taking steps back economically to then move forward again. It's got nothing to do with anything what we call far or extreme or hard right, hard left. It's got nothing to do with that. And I've made it very clear a few months ago when I was finally in a position to take control of the party, made it very clear. It's called ethno-nationalism, which is essentially that a white man would say that they don't want anything to do with someone of another skin color, another race. The ethno-nationalists, what we call the actual neo-Nazis, the real neo-Nazis. So to give you an example, there's 80 prescribed terrorist organizations in the UK. 6 out of the 80 are white supremacists, whereas 57 out of the 80 are Islamic jihadi based. So we don't have a far right problem in the UK at all, because everything's held in comparison. But personally, as a leader and as a politician and as a party, we reject ethno-nationalism, i.e. if you want to be like that, situate yourself on the far right. Unfortunately, it's not something that we believe in. We don't see skin colour.
Yeah, good point. The problem is, of course, that Slippery Starmer is purposefully trying to use movements like UKIP and Reform UK and media personalities like Lawrence Fox and Calvin Robinson and probably myself and put us into this far right bracket. He thinks that that is somehow going to lead to success. And I want you to have a look at how Starmer defines the far right, talks about the far right, and I'll get you to respond off the bat.
Do you think the rioters were racists?
I think a far right. I think there was racism there. I think it featured differently across the country. I went over to Belfast, for example, to talk to the police service of Northern Ireland, who had petrol bombs thrown at them. And there's no doubt there was racism there. So there was racism far right, but it was totally illegitimate. It is not acceptable in any society. And yes, I accept that, you know, across the country, people have strong views about things like immigration. I accept that, but I'm not prepared to tolerate that sort of disorder under any circumstances, nor will I change government policy one bit as a result of that sort of violence.
Do you think we're a racist country?
I don't think we're a racist country. I think we're a country of decent people, tolerant people. The real Britain was the people who came out the day after in Southport. It was incredible. People came out with their trowels, with their brooms, they cleaned up, they rebuilt. They're the real face of Britain. And that's the Britain that I think is essential to reuniting and bringing this country back together.
Sorry, Dan, I didn't quite hear the question.
Just how would you respond to Starmer?
I'm quaking with rage. You can't argue with psychopaths. You can't reason with them. So my response is this: Keir Starmer's a disgrace. He's a far left extremist. He is a Marxist, communist Marxist. The man is incredibly dangerous. So let's unpack it. During the BLM riots, we were all at home, again, forced to stay at home. And of course, at the end of the arm on the handheld and on the TV, the Black Lives Matter, which is a Marxist organization, run amok. It totally and completely ran amok across the world. And what did individuals like Starmer do? They took the knee. They supported, they endorsed, they facilitated, they enabled. You know, the language that you hear, they've got historical grievances. We should be considerate. We should be kind. We should be understanding. When they tear statues down and mayors and chief constables and police officers are told to stand down and watch them perform heinous levels of what's called violent disorder and affray, indeed criminality. Stand down, guys. They've got their reasons for doing it. They've got the historical grievances based on bastardized history. Now let's compare that with what we've just heard Stalinist Starmer say about the rioters. Let's be absolutely clear about this. Noticed he gave an example from Northern Ireland, which is a different kettle of fish, indeed Ireland is, to the UK. After those 3 little girls were slain by a man who, again, remember the infamous no clear motive. It's been what, 8 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. It's the same with the Islamist thugs at Manchester Terminal 2. No clear motive. Have they been charged yet? We're not sure. The public are being lied to over and over again. The officer at the barrack in Brompton, again, there's endless cases whereby the public is lied to by the media and by the government. So let's take the exact example of the clip you've shown me. You've got a man like Starmer talking about the far right, fueled by racism, on the front line after the Southport slayings. So if you're on a front line in a demo, in a protest, and you are throwing Molotovs at the police, you are going to prison. You deserve to go to prison. If you break into stores and loot, you are going to prison. If you decide in the context of this to strike a match in a migrant hotel, I don't actually know of any hotels that went up in flames, you are going to prison. Just like in Hare Hills. Oh, yes, infamous Hare Hills. All of those migrants, the Islamic community denying that any Muslims were there. I saw the footage. There was 1,000 people there, and I'm 99% sure I saw and heard an awful lot of Islamic presence.
Well, they were yelling Allahu Akbar, weren't they? Which is not something that, on the whole, the traveller community does.
The traveller community doesn't do it. The Christian community would never do it, obviously, because it's heresy. So the reality is that we've got these, the Hare Hills riots were all migrant Islamic based. Again, no outrage, nothing about jihadi or Islamic extremism, nothing about far left or violent disorder from Marxists.
And I'm going to talk to you just a moment, actually, about the rioters and about what you're doing in terms of trying to defend them against what is clearly very unfair justice. But just before I get to that, can I just get your clarity as the leader of a political party on the two scandals today, the early prisoner release and the rejection of the winter fuel payments for pensioners?
Yeah, of course. So my understanding, Dan, is there's 5,000 prisoners who are going to be eligible for early release.
Correct.
So in the UK, So in the UK, everyone knows you serve half. A lot of these people are repeat offenders, so they get 50%, even if they're a repeat offender, most likely. And now it's been reduced to 40%. So you're talking about people who are dangerous and cause a massive problem with regards to public safety, up to 5,000 being let out early. You've got over 10,000 foreign national prisoners, again, as a political party and as a leader of that party. All of those, if you are here and you are foreign, you commit on a visa and you commit a crime, you are deported. So you've got this urgency by Keir to bring up space, going back to James O'Brien's point about this nonsense shot glass and pint glass analogy. You've got 10,000 foreign nationals in prison. They need to be deported. There's more than enough space. If it's a heinous crime or if it deserves prison time in the UK, there's more than enough space. There aren't the words to describe how dangerous and awful this policy is to release up to 5,000. And we've seen the footage today as well. These aren't men in suits. These aren't men who have grieving families there and their wives are there. And it was all men in tracksuits and that nonsense grime music, etc., was being played loud and proud. And we know from inside the prisons as well, we've got a huge issue with forced Islamic conversions. We saw today the individual, his name is Fitzgerald. He had the classic jihadi beard, and I noticed the interviewer didn't press him on that. That's quite interesting. We need to know more about that. And I have inside information with regards to who the screws are that are running the prisons as well, and what those people who are going in now for as a result of being involved in the riots, who haven't actually committed any crimes. They're just pleading guilty. I know what they're now going into as well with regards to Islamist gangs in prison. So the situation is so indescribable, and that's without even talking about the UKIP's policy with regards to some of the efficacy and utility of the modern day prison system. These people are given way too much luxury. They're given way too much. The scandals that come out of prisons just the other month with a sexual relationship between a prison guard, I believe is at Wandsworth, and an Asian man in a group cell smoking marijuana whilst involved in, well, it is criminality. I'm sure she's definitely going to be in a bad position at the end of it. So we need to look at why are we treating these prisoners so well. There's so many issues to unpack, not just the release of the 5,000, 1,700 at the moment, but we need to start talking about things like the Islamic community in prison. In the UK, they make up 6% of the population, but in prison, it's 18% of the population. So the whole prison conversation is probably a completely separate show to really unpack.
Yes,
you can't write what's happening.
No, indeed it is. Well, look, do stand by though, because I want to talk to you specifically about the advocacy work that you are doing on behalf of some of the souls who have been caught up in the Southport massacre, however you want to describe it. Obviously, the mainstream media would say riots. I would probably use the word unrest. So let's talk about that in just 1 minute. Don't go anywhere. Nick Marcel Tenconi. First, though, have you ever wondered what happened to the legendary Chuck Norris? Now, I recently saw a video he made, and I was shocked. He's in his 80s and still kicking butt, working out, and staying active. What's even more shocking is he's stronger, can work out longer, and even has plenty of energy left over for his grandkids. He did this by making just one change. He says he still feels like he's in his 50s. His wife even started doing this one thing too, and she's never felt better. She says she feels 10 years younger, her body looks leaner, and she has energy all day. Chuck made a special video that explains everything. Make sure you watch it by going to chuckdefense.com/outspoken or by clicking on the link in the show notes below this video or on the QR code on screen. It will change the way you think about your health. Once again, that's chuckdefense.com/outspoken. Click on the link in the show notes below to watch the video now. You simply won't believe it. Just a reminder, the legendary Chuck Norris is a whopping 84 years old and yet has more energy than me. He discovered he could create dramatic changes to his health simply focusing on 3 things that sabotage our body as we age. Watch his method by clicking on the link in the description box below, but the address, chuckdefense.com/outspoken. But now, back to the show, and I'm joined again by Nick Marcel Tenconi, the leader of the UKIP party, and critically, one of the only politicians in this country who has been prepared to stand up for the lack of justice being dished out to those poor souls who were unwittingly caught up in the unrest following the Southport massacre. Watch him feeling pretty despondent, actually, after attending one of the court hearings.
On a personal note, I feel absolutely sick to my stomach with regards to what I've witnessed at Winchester Crown Court this morning. The barrister phoned the defendant that I know last night to manage expectations. If you plead not guilty or if you enter no plea, you're going to be remanded. In what world does that happen where he's committed no violent crime? The CCTV footage is incredibly questionable with regards to implicating criminality. The case is far more complicated than that. The individual was present, but he didn't commit any crimes. Then this morning, again, you've got to make a decision. What do you want to do? Do you want to enter no plea? Do you want to say guilty? You're not guilty? Essentially, either way, you're being remanded. You're going to prison. It's just, I'm sick to my stomach. A 65-year-old man has also just been, his wife was there, his children were there. 7 families, 6 out of the 7, 6 families, mothers, ordinary concerned citizens, their brothers and sisters, the sons and daughters, they're all heartbroken now. They're all devastated. These are people that you know, that I know. They're your neighbours. They're the people you chat to, work colleagues. These are ordinary people who haven't engaged in any criminality. They were simply there at the time.
And Nick Marcel Tenconi, that is the critical point, isn't it? You're not defending violent criminals. I'm not defending violent criminals, but I absolutely will defend people who quite clearly are political prisoners being made an example of in the mainstream media and being punished in inhumane ways, as you say, in some cases for simply being at the scene of a crime, which is not a crime, but they're told, oh, plead guilty. That's the only way that you'll avoid a long prison sentence. Or, Nick, and this is a thing that has really got me, people like Julie Sweeney, Lucy Connolly, mothers, pensioners, housewives, carers, locked up for months on end for an inartful post on X or Facebook. And no one, Nick, outside of you and maybe me and a few others are speaking up for these poor souls.
Absolutely, Dan. So let me be very, very clear to maximize our time together for all your viewers. If you have no knowledge of the British legal system, if you've never been in a Crown Court before, if you've never dealt with a solicitor, let alone a barrister before, when you are violent disorder is used specifically because it carries the 5-year mark. It's used specifically to quash. When in 2011 we had the same sort of thing with the riots, it's designed to paralyze you with fear. So if you're in an assault or in a fray, everyone sort of knows the score. If you've got no previous form and no one got hurt, you're going to do some community service, say you're sorry, smack on the wrist, no one got hurt. But violent disorder is there. It's used specifically to paralyze you. You need 3 people present. You just need 3 people there. How on earth they prove who was part of the group isn't relevant. You just need 3 people there. And of course, you've got all these protests happening up and down the country against illegal immigration, and rightly so. And going back to the thrust of our argument, 99% of it is peaceful. 99% of it is people saying, we are frustrated, we are angry, we are sick of it. Going back to the winter fuel allowance and the money that gets spent in directions that it shouldn't be going in, when it should actually be going to heat pensioners. We're at absolute breaking point. So let's be very clear for your viewers. When the individual is contacted by the police and they've never dealt with the police before, they are paralyzed by fear. That's what happens. And they don't want to think about it. This is the stages of the process. They don't want to think about it. Then they have a court date. In the case where riots or unrest or protests happen, comes by very quickly. So all they've got to do is just bury their head in the sand. These poor souls rock up at a Crown Court. Again, very intimidating. A lot of bags are packed in case you're going out the back in a Securical van. And it's the first time you're going to speak to the barrister. Now, I knew that was going to happen for the 7 last Wednesday at Winchester Crown Court. For the individual that I knew that was likely the case. I didn't know everything about his background, but I likely the case. So I sat there with him and the barrister, and this is what happened for your listeners. The barrister said, whether you plead guilty or not guilty, this was a plea hearing, Dan. It was not sentencing. It was a plea hearing. There's over 1,000 arrests, over 500 charges, and over 100 people have gone to prison. So what percentage of those people who are potentially going to be found not guilty at trial are now serving in prison? This is what she said, verbatim. Whether you plead guilty or not guilty, this is a plea hearing, not sentencing. You are going to be remanded. Now, if you plead guilty, as you know, it's 50% in the UK that you serve. That's been dropped to 40% now. And then there's whatever the 33% off. So let's face it. You're terrified. You're paralyzed by fear. In the case of the people that have been involved in what we call a non-violent violent disorder. So yes, they were there, but they've done nothing wrong. And potentially they're of good character and they've got no previous. You're sat there 20 minutes to go until that bell goes where you're going into court, and you're being told no matter what you do, you're going to prison. So you've got 2 choices. You can have a longer sentence or a shorter sentence. 99% of people who are inoculated by fear and who don't know the system, who have grieving, crying mothers, sisters, aunties, family members there, are going to say, just plead guilty. Just end this, please. And that is exactly what my forecast was. And that is what I saw. And I spoke to the defendant who I know, and I said, if you've seen the footage, if you are sure that you are innocent, if you're sure you did nothing wrong, if you're not guilty, I am 99% certain, knowing what I know about the legal system, about this case, that you will not be remanded. No judge can remand you on a not guilty plea with the prisons at max for a non-violent violent disorder. And lo and behold, the 6 that pleaded guilty, they're all in prison now. Bearing in mind, it was a plea hearing, not sentencing. They're all in prison before they've been sentenced. And the chap that said, I'm not guilty, I'm going to fight this, he was not remanded. He is free to be back with his daughters, with his family. And guess when his sentencing is? Guess when his trial starts? April next year. Well, Yvette Cooper might not be Home Secretary next year. Keir Starmer might not be in position next year. We might have realised that by releasing
and he'll get the evidence, won't he? He'll get the evidence. People will be able to see the CCTV footage, and he will be able to prove that he was not involved in the violence and clear his name and, please God, not end up in prison. So I guess your message, Nick, is don't plead guilty simply because the authorities are pressuring you to do so, because it is part of a bigger political plot and you're being used as a pawn. And you're being used as a pawn, aren't you, to strike fear in the heart of people who, for example, support UKIP.
Absolutely. And I'd like to link that to, again, that devastating 15 minutes where you've done a great job there, Dan, just really painting the picture. But again, the outrage, there is an agenda happening. No one quite understands why a man like Starmer would do this, why communism is now here in Britain, that all those Labour voters are probably rubbing their hands with glee. They're not looking at it thinking, oh, maybe 1 or 2 perhaps, but they're not looking at it thinking, oh, we've made a terrible mistake here earlier this year. What have we done? We voted a communist in. So the reality is that there is an agenda at play here, going back to the winter fuel allowance, 33 billion to Ukraine, 11.6 billion on African climate aid, 11 billion to the unions, 8 billion on energy, 10 billion on public sector wages. There's so much money to go around. There is an agenda, 21 billion on unemployed migrants, a billion or two on housing illegals. There's more than enough money to go around. There's an agenda at play, and that agenda, first and foremost, very clever. It's communism. It's to paralyze you with fear. If you're not guilty, stop.
Exactly. And I wanted to show a bit of a video of you on the streets, Nick, proving that it is possible. It is possible to take your message to the streets and do so in a completely legal and safe manner. Have a look at this.
No one voted for mass, uncontrolled immigration. No one voted for illegals, for invaders to break into our country, to be facilitated by the establishment. No one voted for that. Tell them what you want to say. Tell the government what you want to... What do you want them to hear? Tell them.
And Nick, Calvin Robinson, Father Calvin Robinson, who is now your chief spokesperson, but also a regular on this show, and also Douglas Murray, the Spectator columnist, both of them have been clear that you cannot be too afraid to take to the streets as long as you are doing so peacefully. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. So after the Hare Hills incident and the Southport slaying, there was a motivation, there was an impetus for people to be on the street, and rightly so, saying we've had enough of this. So it's your democratic right to peaceful protest. So let's be absolutely clear. If you don't have your right to protest, and if you don't have, most importantly, free speech, you do not have democracy. Simple. So there was a huge impetus, and it was my absolute pleasure to stand shoulder to shoulder with the ordinary hardworking man, saying we are absolutely sick to death of that. And 99% of what I saw being on the front line was peaceful. On the Patriot side, we were constantly telling people to keep their cool, to keep their calm, to respect police orders, like so many other Patriots that are involved in bringing people together to find their voice and to stand strong as Patriots against the evil that we face. And in the case of Plymouth, the far left, typically they're referred to as Socialist Worker Party or Antifa, they stood on the church there in the centre. I think it's St Mary's, but they stood on the church there. They tore up graves, they dismantled headstones, and they threw the missiles at us, whilst the police faced off to us and had their backs to the far left. They refused. It didn't matter how hard I asked them or shouted, arrest them, arrest them. They didn't want to know. So it's always peaceful, guys. That's it. If you're involved in criminality, you're going to face the full extent of the law. But that's 99. It's 1%. And 99% of people are frustrated and they want to have their voices heard, like you just saw in that clip in Bournemouth there. So if you're involved in criminality, then you're going to have to face the consequences. But for the 99%, these people are angry. They are frustrated. They're not being listened to. And it's not just by the current government, it's by the establishment. You can't let the Tories off the hook here for what they've done and what they've allowed. They've passed the baton over to with Labour. And what's happening to those poor souls now who are in prison? I'm dealing with families who have an 18-year-old, families who have a 65-year-old in there. These people don't have form. They're not violent criminals. They were just there at that time, not even in the wrong place at the wrong time, but just there at that time.
Well, I think they are political prisoners. I really do think they are political prisoners. And I know some people say that's hyperbole, but it's not when you look at the individual cases. But I think it's been a very dark day, Nick. So what I wanted to do to wrap is actually have a little laugh, but do it in a way that actually pulls together perfectly the arguments that we've both been making today. So luckily two of my favorite comedians delivered. First, here's Andrew Lawrence on the madness of the prisoner release.
Hello, as you can see, I'm back inside again, doing a stretch for posting online videos with humorous intent, being willfully mischievous on the internet, causing reckless endangerment to people's feelings, spreading far-right conspiracy theories thinly veiled as jokes. Thought I'd got away with it, to be honest. Didn't think they were going to be able to find any prison space for me, but luckily today they've just released 1,700 dangerous criminals early, so that they've got plenty of room to accommodate people posting spicy memes on social media. And now it's just me and a load of middle-aged white blokes who've got carried away on Facebook, all doing a bit of jail time. Sadly, since they released all the real criminals, there is a shocking lack of diversity in prisons up and down the country. Before long, it's going to be whiter than the Arctic Circle in here, to be honest with you. Very soon, prison will be the only place in the UK that isn't multicultural. Still, the chances of getting stabbed have just decreased dramatically. The warden said to think of it less as a prison, more as a re-education centre. We're all going to be forced to watch BBC News for 12 hours a day and offer up our thanks to Chairman Keir before every meal.
And watching BBC News for 12 hours a day, wow, that really is punishment. Dapper Laughs was brilliant on this too.
It just released me early. Your boy's out. I'm free at last. Hey, look. Yes. Hey, apparently there's been like a mad influx of OAPs posting like hurty words and naughty memes on Facebook, you know, so they get themselves nicked so they don't freeze to death over the winter. So they're getting in there to get warm, you know. Now Keir Starmer's killing them off by taking away their winter fuel allowance. Luckily, I'm one of the 1,700 prisoners being released early today. You know, I was doing 5 years for an armed robbery. Nothing serious. Just popped into HSBC with a little sawn-off shotgun. Bosh, done the security guard, nicked a bit of dough. I ain't gonna lie though, I'm gonna miss Wandsworth Prison. It's one of the best ones.
Nick, you have to laugh sometimes, don't you? In these extraordinarily dystopian times, at least it's bringing out some good comedy, pointing out the absurdity of this whole thing.
I appreciate the sentiment very much so, but in 5 years' time, we're voting our way out of this. So we're going to start the UKIP roadshow. We're going to be taking it to the public, and we're going to be looking to reignite that support that once was. So outrage is at max. Now it's time for activity and output to be at max.
Brilliant stuff. Well, look, we look forward to keeping in touch and having you appear much more on Outspoken in the future. That is Nick Marcel Tenconi, the new leader of UKIP. Now, Angela Levin is standing by with an extraordinary revelation about the secret meaning of Catherine's cancer-free video. She is up in just 1 minute. But first, you know it is the best time of year. Football is back. We're talking Premier League in the UK and in the US, NFL Sundays and college football Saturdays. And with that comes the glorious grind of fantasy football lineups. Now, this is where your inner manager comes alive, setting the perfect fantasy roster, screaming at your TV and making last-minute waiver moves that either make you a hero or the guy everyone ridicules in the group chat. That's usually me. But listen, while you're over here making sure your fantasy team is dialed in, don't let your personal grooming become the guy that gets left on the bench. Let's be honest, nobody wants to fumble their grooming routine. And that's where Manscaped's Performance Package 5.0 Ultra comes in, acting as your all-in-one grooming playbook. From keeping things sharp down below with the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra to taking care of those rogue nose and ear hairs with the Weed Whacker 2.0, this is the lineup that will keep you looking and feeling like a champ on and off the field. It will help you feel clean, confident, and ready to dominate your fantasy league. The Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra Groin and Body Hair Trimmer is the franchise player of your grooming roster. With precise trimming capabilities, it's reliable, efficient, and gets the job done without fumbling. Whether it's for date night, a weekend tailgate, or just everyday grooming, this is the tool you want on your squad. No one wants a surprise nose or ear hair making a guest appearance on game day, so the Weed Whacker 2.0 handles those details like a pro, keeping you neat and ready to go. No missed tackles in your grooming game. The Performance Package 5.0 Ultra doesn't stop at grooming essentials, though. It also comes today with 2 free gifts. The Boxers 2.0 Midnight Bravo and the Shed 2.0 Toiletry Bag premium gear to ensure you're always ready, whether at home or on the road. So join the over 10 million men worldwide, I'm one of them, who trust Manscaped, and get ready for kickoff by heading over to manscaped.com. If you use the code Outspoken at checkout today, you will get 20% off and free shipping. Trust me, you'll be drafting the real MVP of grooming this season. 20% off, free shipping using the code Outspoken at manscaped.com. I will post the link in the show notes. Stay on top of your grooming, gang, and be ready for anything the season throws your way. But now back to the show, and it's time for our Royal Mastermind. And the world has been shocked by the incredible cancer-free video of Catherine, the Princess of Wales. But were there secret meanings behind many of the awe-inspiring moments in the video? Angela Levin up in just a moment, but first let's have a look at the critical moment that she's going to be talking about.
To all those who are continuing their own cancer journey, I remain with you, side by side, hand in hand. Out of darkness can come light, so let that light shine bright.
And it has divided the royal world. Angela Levin, Prince Harry's and Queen Camilla's biographer, joins me now. Angela, before we talk about the video in general, I've been dying to know, you've got some information about the secret symbols in that video, don't you? What can you tell us?
Yes, I didn't got the information. I knew it. I knew these things. So we saw that she let a white butterfly fly away out of her hand. That was the last thing you showed there. And it's a symbol of transformation, rebirth, hope, freedom, and love. That's what butterflies mean, actually. And people keep them. If somebody gets very ill, they get a butterfly. Sometimes they get a butterfly brooch. Sometimes they find one and they feel that this person is talking to them and looking after them and make them feel much better. The other thing there, which was right at the end, was a white feather which blew away. And feathers are all to do with trust, honor, strength, wisdom, power, and freedom. So there you have two sides of this wonderful woman, where she says things. She spoke beautifully. She said in a way everything she needed to say, but these were two symbols of what she wanted to prove, that she cares on both sides for all of this. And she does feel she has strength and wisdom. And she does feel that this is a rebirth, and there's a sort of freedom and certainly a lot of love. The whole feeling in that wonderful 3 minutes video was that love is beyond anything there.
Yeah, it's really interesting actually that you use the phrase rebirth, because I keep thinking that this video illustrates not just Catherine being reborn, but William and Catherine as a couple being reborn too. Obviously, it's been an incredibly stressful time for them both, but their love is stronger than ever. And I think they are making the point to the world, aren't they, that forget the rumours, we are completely united and we will do this together.
Yes, well, William is particularly private. He doesn't want anyone to know anything about his private life. And this shows suddenly, boom, he's changed. He thinks it's more important to show how much he loves his wife and children than actually being very sort of locked in. I mean, the late Queen Elizabeth would have been quite shocked, very shocked. But we move on, and in a new generation have different things that are important. And here it seems very much family and very much love. And he missed out on a happy family when he was young, but he's been given this by the Middletons and certainly by his wife. And it's changed him. And the children come in as well. They're not left on the outside, or they mustn't hear about it. They knew that they were being filmed, and they wanted to show how happy and jolly they were. And I thought that was very, very moving. Very, very moving.
Yeah, it was. And it was a totally different side of Catherine. And I do not blame her at all, Angela, for wanting to do this. Think of what she's had to put up with. Not just the past 9 months in terms of her devastating diagnosis and then the chemotherapy that follows, which absolutely changes someone. It is a terrible, terrible thing to go through. But the most revolting speculation about her marriage, about her state of mind, about her appearance, about whether she's even alive. And I would say, actually, this cancer diagnosis has given her the confidence now to say, no, I am going to be me, and I am going to put my love for William and my love for the children in public with no shame and no fear and no concern about royal protocol. And to be honest, Angela, after all of the despicable, disgusting things that were thrown at her, I fully endorse that. And I've been really shocked, actually, to read people like Liz Jones in the Daily Mail, who previously have been hugely supportive of Catherine and William, being really vile about this video. I just don't get it.
Well, I think some people very much like to be negative, and that's what they are. But actually, who cares what she thinks? That doesn't matter at all. I think that Catherine, who was very shy about speaking to the public, and William helped her. She was shaking with nerves, and when she sat down, he'd always put his arms around her because she found it very difficult. It is difficult. He was speaking to huge numbers, and now she can do that, and I think it's up to her how she feels. I also feel quite strongly that the King would support her in many ways, because he's not always about facts and this sort of thing. I mean, nature and fresh air and being healthy when you walk and seeing beautiful places that was made by God. I think he would feel, he adores her, and I think he would feel very proud of her. I wouldn't be annoyed in any way, actually. There's that butterfly again.
Symbolic.
Yes, and I think that that's right. You can't let everybody love you or like what you're saying. You just have to pick what you want to do and then get on with it. I mean, she doesn't hurt anybody. This is very positive. This is a lovely, happy family with children who've understood what their mothers had and been very lovely to her. You can see that in the video. And you know, there's also nasty people, and you just have to shut your mind. And I think that's one of the reasons why William in particular doesn't want to see his brother. He doesn't want to start a whole argument. You just shut the door and get on with your life.
Well, I'm totally with you. I'm totally with you, because the thing is, Angela, think of all of the criticism that they had earlier this year. Oh, you're not talking to the public enough. You're not giving us enough information. You're the ones that are allowing the conspiracies to run rampant because you're being so private. Then she does something which is deeply private and deeply personal, and she's still criticized. So I think it was the right thing to do. But look, speaking of Prince Harry, I did want to ask about this absolutely tasteless stunt from the Duke of Sussex yesterday. I actually couldn't believe it, Angela. I had to check that it actually happened to make sure it was true, but it was. So Catherine posts her video at 4:29 UK time. And then, like clockwork, at 6:09 UK time, so literally 90 minutes after Catherine's announcement, that is all the time Harry decided to give her before Netflix release the first promotion for his new Polo documentary series produced by Archewell that they say follows elite global players and offers an exclusive behind-the-scenes look at the fast-paced world of the sport. Now, the thing is, if this was a one-off, Angela, if this was a one-off, we could give the guy benefit of the doubt. But you know, and I know, this happens virtually every time there is some sort of major announcement from William and Catherine. Harry decides within a couple of hours to release his own announcement and to take some sort of attention away from Catherine. And the thing is, all he needed to do, Angela, was make one phone call to Netflix. That was it. One phone call to Netflix. Look, I've just seen this video released by Catherine. If this was pre-planned, just hold off. Just hold off a day or two. But of course he didn't.
No, I'm not entirely sure about him. You know, I'm the first one to criticize him a lot. I'm not entirely sure, because I think he's very upset that Netflix are doing all these pre-filming, showing people what it might be, how wonderful it is to understand what polo is all about. And he's not in it. They haven't put him in any of the early shots. So although it's still with the Archie Foundation, there's obviously are diminishing his part in this series. But what's quite obvious is that it's not coming out till December. There was absolutely zero necessity to bring it out now in September. We'd all forget about it. I don't think it's the least bit interested. Any man I've asked, are you interested in polo? They said, oh my God, no. I don't think it's a great big deal. But they're doing something that is most peculiar, and I can't quite get my head round it. He's not in it, but he is in it. It's very, very boring. It's for people who've got loads of money, and it's not coming out to Christmas, which is a very funny time to do it because the weather's so awful. I can't imagine what's going in their minds, but it's not good, and it will just not be very many people seeing it, and that maybe will give them an excuse to say we're not going to do anything anymore with Harry.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Look, I just thought all it takes is one phone call, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because we also, Angela, have had no public comment from Harry and Meghan.
There must be
congratulating Catherine on finishing her treatment, for example. Nothing.
Yes, well, they're eating themselves up with anger. They're very cross. They don't like it when William and Catherine do one over on them. They're not doing one over. They're just saying how they are and what they feel. But I think they're getting more and more angry. I think this is one reason that makes them do these phony royal trips. They got another one planned quite soon, maybe two. And they're doing that because they know this is a wonderful way to really antagonize everybody and have a free trip. It is shocking. They really need to, after 4 years, I was looking this afternoon at my book I wrote on Harry and how he felt. And you think, actually, he's the same on so many things. He's not growing up at all. He just is stuck. And it's tragic, really. And Meghan is actually determined to win everything and to beat them, but she can't. I mean, that video was just amazing. Every single word had been thought out. The music was beautiful. The lighting was beautiful. And she looked wonderful.
I know, but imagine Meghan's anger at that, because she hates any time Catherine gets good publicity. She hates it and she thinks it's unfair, and she thinks, oh, it's all because people prefer Catherine because she's white. No, it's nothing to do with that. It's to do with the fact that she's a very different type of person to you.
Yes, but you see now from this video how wonderful Catherine has been, and that our feelings about her and the way that she's actually honoured her position and honoured the family so much. You can see really more of what her soul is like, and that's very amazing to see. Whereas Meghan is very dark, and it's don't feel the same way. I mean, she did say I can't remember who she sent it to, but she did say, it's absolutely not right that Catherine is the one who walks in front of me or does the things that I would like to do, because I am a self-made person and I know how to do things much better than her. She's done nothing, and I'm just not taken advantage of. So I don't know it's entirely the fact that she feels it's black v white, but it's the fact that she thinks she's absolutely powerful. And therefore, Catherine is not, because she didn't have the same as she's got, the same qualities and experience. Of course, that's absolute nonsense.
No, that makes a lot of sense, though, actually, when you describe it that way. Just the one other thing that I thought, Angela, when I was watching the video yesterday and thinking about what it means for Catherine to be out of the chemotherapy treatment, even though she's not yet what you would describe as cancer-free, and there's still a long road. And I was just thinking about how astonishing it was that Harry didn't ask William anything about it when they were together in the same room at Lord Fallow's funeral.
Well, they weren't talking at all, and I think that was very clear. I think if he'd have asked something, William would have been furious. I think it's best they didn't speak because it would be a turmoil. I think to try and be friends when there's so much to deal with, they need weeks to sort it out. But Harry is still going on about an apology, and he's attacking William now. He's obviously not getting anywhere with the king, and no one's letting him to see his sister-in-law. He always wanted her as a sister that he never had, and yet he also wants to call her, you know, she was somebody he married because she'd fit into the royal family, you know, not because he loved her. And I think that would have made William absolutely incandescent. And I think they wouldn't want to talk about that at a funeral. If he'd have said, "How is Catherine?" he would have said, "I'm quite sure," you know, not said anything or turned away.
Yeah, because he wouldn't have wanted the information leaked to the American media, would he?
Yeah, exactly. That's the trouble. When you do things like that, you can never be trusted again.
No, and they never should trust him again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Angela Levin, thank you very much. Do stand by, though, because we have much more from Angela coming up in our Uncancelled After Show. You know, it's very important to me that we have a safe space not patrolled by big tech, because on big tech, censorship and controls run deep. So that's why I have launched www.outspoken.live. It is our membership section where you will get half an hour of extra content after the main show every single day. So at this stage, we come off YouTube and Rumble. We move to our own platform to continue the conversation with Angela in the Uncancelled After Show. If you want to sign up, all you have to do is visit www.outspoken.live. Remember, we're back tomorrow at 5 p.m. UK time, midday Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Very big show. Father Calvin Robinson and Monica Crowley react to the Trump versus Harris debate. Goodness me, I'm going to be staying up late. I cannot wait. Get the popcorn at the ready. Let me know what you think. Most importantly, though, I promise to keep fighting for you. See you on the after show with Angela Levin in just one moment.